My name is Helen Shabas, and I am a Holocaust survivor. I was born in Warsaw, Poland, on March 20th, 1928, the first of two daughters to Samuel and Liba Bronstein. When my sister was born, I was 3 years old, and I remember like now going to visit my mother in the hospital with my father. We came in the room, my mother was laying in a bed, and then I saw the crib with Dorothy laying. She was covered the face with a hanky, and the handkerchief had embroidery, and I can see it. It was in purple, the embroidery. We were still staying in Warsaw, and when my mother was discharged from the hospital, since we lived 3 flights up, she couldn't go up so many flights. So I remember like now that 2 men were putting her in a chair and carrying her up the 3 flights. My father didn't like to live in Poland because he saw the antisemitism, what was going on. And that's why he started to make plans for the family to live for some other place. He went to the American consulate a few times. My mother's parents lived in the United States, and they sent papers that they'll support us if it's needed, but still nothing helped. The State Department was very anti-Semitic at those times too. They didn't give him the visa. So my father decided he'll go illegally to Palestine. He went illegal after paying money and other things. This was in the 30s. He knew that soon they were talking already about a war, but he couldn't bring us there. He didn't want to stay by himself, that never be able to take the family. So he came back. I wish he would never come back. He would be alive. My father knew that it will take a while till we can leave Poland. So we moved from Warsaw when I was 8 years old to a small town, Drohicyn, where my grandparents used to live. My father thought that the move to Drohicyn will be temporary, that any day we'll get a visa to go to the United States for the whole family. In the meantime, we wouldn't have to pay rent in Warsaw because the house in Drohicyn was my grandparents' and we didn't pay anything. When we had to move, my mother was crying because she was used to the big city. Warsaw was the capital of Poland, and she liked it there. We had electricity, we had gas, we had a toilet that you just flushed down. When we moved to Drohicyn, you didn't have any of those things. We had to use the outhouse. My mother had to bring in wood and put in the stove to cook. It was a small town going from a big city to a small town. It was a different life, but for me, I was so young, I was 8 years old, so what do I know? I liked the town. It was a small town, Drohicyn, but nice. It had a river, the second largest river in Poland, and in the summer, my aunt and my 4 cousins used to come from Warsaw. We used to go to the beach, and they taught me how to ride a bicycle, and they taught me some poems that I still remember, and I loved it. It was so nice. I loved those cousins. I was a very thin kid, pale, and I didn't have an appetite to eat. And my mother thought that if she sent me to the river brook that we lived not far from, I'll eat better. So she used to pack up food, give it to my aunt Risha, my father's sister, and we walked to the river brook every day almost in the summer. I really ate better there, but I was afraid to go in the water because I didn't know how to swim. I don't know even today how to swim. I went to 2nd grade there. When I came the first time to the 2nd grade, and my teacher, her name was Borecki, Mrs. Borecki, and she asked me like everybody, she has the name. And I said to her, my name is Hela Bronstein. And she said, it cannot be Hela. So I said, yes, and all the kids were laughing at me. So I went to my mother the next day, and I said, you know, she said that it cannot be Hela, but this is my name. So my mother knew what she meant. My mother said, because she wants your Jewish name, not your Polish name. So the next day I came back, and I told her that my name is Chaya. And then they started to call me names. Haika, Haika, Haika. To go in school there was no pleasure. I didn't like it. I tried to be the best student, but I didn't like it. They used to call you names. You differently felt like you don't belong, like you were an outsider. May 3rd was Poland's Independence Day, and they used to have a big parade going in the street. I remember I was maybe 9 years old. They were going with a flag, and on both sides of the flag used to be children, one child on one side, one child on the other side. And I wanted so much to be the one going next to the flag. So my mother dressed me nice and everything, and I told my teacher, she said, no, you can't. And I knew why I can't, because I was Jewish. One day we had a test of Polish language, and a week later the grades were announced. My name was Bronstein with a B. Before me was a Polish girl, Borkowska. The teacher, his name was Golawski, Jan Golawski. He tells her, you have niedostateczny, it means a 3. Then he read mine. He said, Helen Bronstein has a 5, which is the best grade that you can have. And he told the Polish girl who was before me, he said, aren't you ashamed? You are Polish, and she is Jewish, and you don't have a good grade even. And she was acting like, if you are Jewish, you shouldn't be as good in Polish as a Polish person. In school, when we had a test, I was so nervous. I couldn't even eat my lunch. I used to give it to the woman that cleans the classrooms. In the classroom, I used to always pick up my hand. What do you want? I have to go to the bathroom. I was so nervous, so my mother said, what is it? Maybe you have worms in your stomach. We went to Warsaw, and in Warsaw she took me to a doctor. And she explained everything, and the doctor said, she's a nervous child. And here is a prescription. Buy the medication, she'll feel better. And my mother said, oh, a child is nervous. He's a crazy doctor. She didn't believe it, and she never bought the medication. So I was always nervous. I'm nervous till today. So life wasn't so pleasant in Poland there, but I was a kid. I used to have a lot of friends, and we played hide and seek, and we played all different games. Just Jewish friends. I didn't have Christian friends. As a matter of fact, Saturday they went to school, and the Jewish children didn't go to school Saturday. So Saturday we had to go to the non-Jewish and ask them what was the lesson, what do we have to the homework. So it wasn't a pleasant thing, because this one didn't want, this one said go to this, go to her, go to him. It wasn't a pleasant thing, but this is how it was, especially in the small towns. In the big city, they don't know who is Jewish, who is not. They knew everybody. I knew everybody. I knew who is Jewish and who is not Jewish. When I was a kid even, I knew. Whenever it was intermission in school, they used to call your name. They ran after you with a piece of pork. We were stupid. I should have eaten the pork, but he was running after me, a little boy, and wanted to put in my mouth the pork, because we're not allowed to eat pork. They didn't like us. You could feel it. Like we don't belong. They used to call names. They didn't like us. No Jewish policeman, no Jewish teacher, nothing. The Jews have stores. That's all they have. If you had to buy something, you had to come to the Jews to buy it, in the center of town. Every store was Jewish. There was no Polish store. They did other things. The farmers, they had land, and the doctor was Polish, the two doctors in my town. The Polish town government made the Jewish store owners to put a sign over the door, their name, like Friedman, Bronstein, you know, because they wanted to know which is the Jewish stores. So if the Polish don't want to buy from a Jew, they know that this is a Jewish store. You could buy clothes and you could buy food in the same store. Spożywcze galanteryjne, it's called. In front was the store, and in the back the family lived. It was one room and a kitchen, and the store was in the front. Very small quarters. Sunday, all the stores were closed because the Christians went to church, but people used to come to the living quarters in the back of the store and conduct business that way. There was a bakery, and the rest was you come to a store, you could buy a pair of shoes, perfume, everything. But I think not cheeses and things that spoil. This you bought from the farmers. They came every Monday. Monday was the day that they used to come and display what they have to sell. Jews too, from different cities. So Monday when I came back from school, I used to go and look. I used to love to look what they selling. Hats, and this one sold soap, and this one, and it was cold. They stayed there, so they had a pot with coal, and they used to warm their hands, I remember. And then during the week, like in the summertime, they used to bring strawberries. You could smell already the strawberries. And it was a town that people had cows. In the morning, they took the cows to pasture, and they brought them back. There was a woman that every morning she came with milk, and she brought to our house milk. And you heard in the morning, you heard the rooster, cuckoo. You knew it's very early. It's a very small town. It's a village. Never saw a car, horse and buggy, and in the winter time, sled, you know, and horse. The only car I saw is a bus that used to go from Drohicyn to Siemiatyce to Warsaw. You know, you had, when the bus came, all the kids were running to see. I was running after the bus and smelling the gasoline. And then one day my mother sent me to my aunt who lived in Warsaw. Then I was riding in the bus. I was in seventh heaven. It was the first time I was in a bus or a car. My father was an accountant, and when we lived in Warsaw, he had business building material, and they cut it, you know, and they sell it. My father was an educated man. He spoke a few languages: Polish, Yiddish, Russian, German, and Hebrew. The town I lived in was very small, and the people there, especially the Jewish people, they didn't know even how to speak well Polish. Some people didn't know how to write their names. They weren't educated. So if something important has to be written to the government, to the police, other places, they used to come to my father, since he knew perfect Polish, and he wrote it for them. The Polish people, non-Jews, also came to my father if they need to translate in other languages. Like, for example, in 1914, when the First World War was and the Germans occupied my town, my father was the secretary to the mayor, and he helped a lot of people to translate to the German language. If a Polish man who was bad to the Jews came to my father for translation into German, my father would change the translation so the Polish man would look bad to the Germans. So we weren't the richest people, but we were the more important people of the town. I didn't lack any material things, like I wanted to buy chocolate or ice cream or something. My mother always gave me the money to do it. When it was a holiday, Pesach Passover. The 2 days Passover, I didn't go to school. But when the Halamoyot, the second day's Passover, in the middle, what it goes, my father said, you have to go to school. The others used to beat me up why I go to school, the Jewish children, because they said, you're not supposed to go to school. So my father said, 8 days, you stay home? No, you go to school. Education was very important to my father, and he wanted us to go to school, and he promised that we'll go to high school, we'll go to college. This was very important to him because he was educated. So my father was different than most of the people in town. My father wasn't a very religious man, but he was friends with a rabbi. He used to play chess with him, and whenever the rabbi was coming, he said, Helen, give me my hat. He respected the rabbi, so he wanted to wear a hat when the rabbi comes. Every Saturday evening, my father used to have his friends come over, and they play cards, and I was sitting next to him. I wanted him to win. And after they finished playing, my mother used to serve tea and cake. My father had a lot of friends in town, but 2 of his closest friends that played cards with him were Shloime Drohicyn. He had a fabric store, and Mendele Yolzon. He was a watchmaker. He was fixing watches, selling watches. He was short and chubby. And my sister used to call him Mendele Fendele, Mendele Fendele. And my mother was so angry at her. She called him names. They used to play and they used to talk politics, and I loved to listen to the talk, what they talking about. They were all older than my father. They had grown children already, and I was just a kid. My aunt Risha, who was my father's sister, she was very religious, very religious. And my father wasn't so religious. So when they played cards, she disappeared, because sometimes they played Saturday, and this was a terrible sin. She knew, but she looked away. She was a very smart woman. My sister always wanted to go with me and my friends when I used to go someplace. I didn't want her to come with me. She was 3 years younger than me, and I wanted to be with my friends. So she used to say to my father, she doesn't want to take me. I want to go with her. And my father used to yell at me, why don't you take her? Take her, she's crying. I said, I don't want to take her. And then my father insisted, and I had to take her. I resented it very much. We had a cat. It was yellow, red hair. I didn't like this cat. I didn't like any cat, and I was afraid of them. We had a cat not because we wanted so much a cat, but because we had mice. And my mother thought that if she'll have the cat, the mice will disappear, and that's why she took it in. When I didn't do something that my sister Dorothy wanted, she said, I'll throw the cat on you. And I was so petrified of a cat that I ran the whole town, ran away from her, and I did what she wanted me to do. But sometimes I didn't listen to her. Every time after dinner, my mother used to give us money and said, go buy yourself, for you a chocolate and for your sister a chocolate. And the chocolates used to be wrapped in very nice gold wrapping. And my sister collected those wrappings, and I wanted the chocolate. So I said to her, you know what, I'll give you the wrapping and you give me the chocolate. So she said, okay. So every time I had 2 chocolates, she had 2 wrappings. This lasted like this till 1939. In 1939, September 39, when the war started, I was 11 years old. But I remember the Polish soldiers put up machine guns near our house, because our house was in the center of the town. And my father, he said, let's go, we'll go to the Reznik's house, far from our house. We'll go there, it's safer there. And we went, I remember it like now. We got back after a while. It was a relief that we didn't see the Polish soldiers there and there was no battle. The Germans didn't come yet close to the town. But soon enough, the Germans came and they started their mischief. They came into the town with bayonets in the front of them, scary, very scary. They occupied Poland. My part was just for a few weeks. Right away they started to beat up the Jews and take away some men. They almost took away my father, but somehow they changed their mind. I was sitting on the porch on a little step. My father wasn't in the house, he was in the next house with our neighbors. 2 Germans went there. And I remember when they came out, I understood what they were talking. The dicker in the glazer. My father was a big man in the glasses, and they were hesitating to take him or not to. I said, oh my God. They used to take there a lot of people the first days as they walked in to Poland, but they left. In Drohicyn, the mailman's name was Grajewski, and they had a beautiful villa with beautiful gardens that they used to rent out to people who came for the summer there. My aunt Sorivka Bloch and her children from Warsaw, every summer they used to come and rent from Grajewski, and I used to go there very often to see my cousins. We played in the backyard, we saw them tomatoes she was growing, Mrs. Grajewski, we saw how it comes up, and my cousins, since they lived in Warsaw, they never saw this. And I enjoyed it a lot. It was beautiful, and she was very nice to us. Mrs. Grajewska was a very nice woman. But when the Germans came, the Grajewskis made a store in front of the villa. One day I walked over there and I saw a sign in front of the store. Żydom i psom wstęp broniony. Jews and dogs are forbidden here. I was surprised, but I realized that they were probably always anti-Semitic. But now that the Germans are here, they could show it more. It was terrible fear all the time, because anytime they could come to your house and they put you against the wall, they went over in every drawer, in every closet, they took what they wanted. They didn't look for somebody who is hiding there with a gun. They looked to rob people. The Germans looked for spies, for Russian spies, and they came into our place, to our house. We had a credenza in the kitchen with drawers. They opened up one drawer, another drawer. They found a few eggs. So they took the eggs. I asked my mother later, where did they look for the spies? In the drawer of credenza? They were just looking what to steal, what to take. After a few weeks, they had a pact with Russia, the Germans and with Stalin, and they gave my town to the Russians. And I could see the Germans across the Bug, the river Bug, I could see the Germans. I liked it. It was very nice when the Russians came. We had movies. We never had a movie in this Drohicyn. They used to put in the church a screen, and for nothing. We didn't have to pay. Nice stories, but it's propaganda movies. I enjoyed it. I went to school. When the Germans were, you couldn't go to school, Jewish children. I went to school, and any parades, they chose me to go. I enjoyed it. I liked it very much. I loved to go to the Russian school. First of all, I never had Jewish teachers, but when the Russians came, there were a few Jewish teachers. They all came from Russia, but they were Jewish. I still remember one from algebra, math, he taught us. His name was Kagan. He was a Jew. I was very happy, and I was the best student. And when you were a very good student, they put your name in the post office. There was a whole thing, and the flag is in your classroom. If you're a good student, the Jewish children were invited to a party. They made you that you wanted to learn. When the Russians came, the teaching in school were completely different. They put a lot of emphasis to say that there is no God, that you have to believe in the state. They were talking about evolution, about monkey, that we were monkeys before. And I was young, I didn't understand. I said, sure, there is God. In my school was a teacher, Kagan, and I said to him, there is God. So he answered, where do you have God? In your pocket? I didn't answer because I didn't know what to answer. When I was home, I told my mother about the whole conversation, and she said, just tell him that he's not big enough to see God. I came to school the following day, and I said, you know what? You said there is no God? You are not big enough to see God. The Russians were much better to us. They didn't let the Polish people call us Żyd, Żyd, Jew, Jew. If they did it, they would send you to Siberia. And one Polish man, Chlebinski, he was cursing the Jew, and they sent him to Siberia, and he never came back. Nobody had a non-Jewish friend. But when the Russians came, I had some. The children of the Russian soldiers who were stationed, because we were on the border. So I had a few of them, and even the Polish children, they were different. They changed a little. For me, as a child in school, it got much better. I felt like if I am good, I could do anything. My father, my mother, I don't know what they were thinking, because they didn't talk about it openly. But I know when we went to sleep at night, and my parents thought that we were sleeping, they were afraid to talk because they were against the regime, against the Soviets. They said, watch out, the children might hear it, and they might go in school and talk about it, and they can come at night and just take you out. When the Russians came, you had to write your biography. If you wanted a job, you had to write your biography, who your father was. I remember my father always used to laugh. He says, what can I do? My father wasn't a shoemaker or a tailor. I can't do anything. Shoemaker and tailor was very good by the Russians. His father had a place what you sell beer and whiskey and things like this. I remember he used to laugh. My father was fluent in Russian, so when the Russians came, they made him in charge of distributing the merchandise to villages, shoes, food, whatever it came. With the Russians, you don't know. In the wintertime, you get summer thing. In the summer, you get winter thing. They didn't have too much. The name he had was Zavierzhsty Selmaga. Selmak is the wholesale place. And Zavierzhsty means the director or something like this. This is how the Russians do it. It comes to one place, and he was the one that gave to this village so much and so much to this village. And the people from the village used to bring us chickens and eggs. They wanted him he should give them more. He didn't want, because with the Russians you had to be careful. When you work for them, you cannot have 5 cents more or 5 cents less. They put you to Siberia. But this lasted till June 22nd, 1941. When the Germans came back, it started all the trouble. We were sleeping in the morning. It was June, warm. My mother woke up my father,
and woke us up, and she says, it's thundering terrible. So my father looked out the window, and he said, how could it be thundering? It's the sun is shining. How could it be thundering? Later on, my mother told me she didn't want to tell us that because we'll get scared, but she saw already fire, you know, from the bombing or whatever, not aeroplanes, artillery, because they were just across the river Bug. My mother said, children, you get dressed and let's get out of here. As soon as she said it, maybe 2 minutes, I was dressed, I put on my father's hat. When they were starting to shoot, I ran out and my father said, where are you going? And they followed me. My sister, my mother. The Germans didn't declare war, but they just came, and there was shrapnel. We heard the shooting, was a lot of shooting, but I didn't see the Russians fighting back. They didn't shoot. They were leaving the town. We saw them running, and I knew them because I played with their children, and my father knew them because he was working for them. So we asked them, where should we run? So go w kościoł, go in the church, they said. Near us was a big church, but we didn't go to church. There was a big building, brick building, because I thought that the brick building is safer, because most of the houses in my town were wood. Other people were there already from the neighborhood. I knew them all, and I was very scared, and I told them, please sit on top of me, sit on top of me. I wanted to be covered from all the sides. I was afraid that the shrapnel will go on me. Somebody that I know, she was running back to us, and then I see a piece of shrapnel hitting another building across the street, and the chimney fell down. We were sitting in one place, and some people were running someplace else. They came back, they were wounded. Somehow, I don't know how, but we survived, because later on, when we got out of this place, we saw like a big holes in the ground, like something like a shrapnel probably fell there. After the shooting stopped for a while, we came back. I saw a hole in the mirror of our big wardrobe. This was a long mirror, and in the corner of the mirror was a hole and like glass cracks. A piece from the shrapnel, probably. So if we would stay, something could happen. I didn't want to look this way, so I put a scarf and pinned it and make it look nice. And the bedding, my mother wanted to save, you know, Europe, they always save the bedding, the big deal. So my mother said, it's hot, everything is hot from the bullet. Could have been a fire, but it wasn't. She took it outside. There were just 5 gendarmes, 5 of them in my town. 4 were Germans, and 1 was a Volksdeutsch, a German from Poznań, from a city in Poland. They called the Poznańczyk, and he was the worst one. Then there was the kucharz, the cook. They called him the cook. Then 1 was Knibbel. His name was Knibbel. He was short and fat. And there was the commandant, they used to call him. He was the main man. And there was Polish police with them too. So there were just 5 Germans, but they had 5 or 6 policemen. And I knew the policemen because there were people from my town. Matter of fact, 2 of them, their name was Jabloński. The sister was my friend. The father was a doctor, and we used to go to him when we were sick. He also was friendly with my father, and whenever he was in Warsaw, when we were in Warsaw, he used to sleep in our house. Now we couldn't trust them anymore, and we had to watch what we are doing and what we're saying. The first thing the Germans did, they organized the Judenrat. The Judenrat was a group of Jews representing the Jewish community who the Germans would come to with their demands. For example,
If the Germans needed new boots or furniture for their quarters or other things, they would come to the Judenrat and they would go to the Jewish people and they had either to buy it, the Jewish people, or they had to give their own. The people from the Judenrat knew that my father is perfect in German language. So they came over to him and said, we would like you to be one of us. But he said, no, I don't want to tell people where to live, what to do. But if you don't understand something what the Germans are saying or the German want, you come to me because I'll understand it and I'll explain it to you.
So there were other 5 people that were in the Judenrat and they did everything, whatever they told them.
But no matter what they did for them, it was never good enough. The Germans used to come to the Jewish houses to take things, whatever they wanted. And one day, a short German came to our house. I remember because usually they told and demanded things. In the house was just me, my sister, and my mother, because my father was very scared of them. He told us to stay against the wall. And I was crying, my sister was crying, and we were petrified. When I saw a German, I was petrified. And he said, we'll shoot you, we'll hang you, we'll hang you, we'll shoot you. This is what he constantly said. At that time, I was just 13 years old, and my sister was 10 years old. The German demanded that my mother give him cigarettes and wine. Somebody, a Polish guy, told them that we have it because my father was working in a Russian store. But we didn't have it. We just had one old wine and empty cigarettes. The cigarettes were empty because my father used to make it a little milder, the tobacco, and he puts it in his own cigarettes. My mother showed the German what she had, and he was angry. And the German said to her, look what she's giving us. Leere Zigaretten und alten Wein. Empty cigarettes and old wine. And he said to my mother, tomorrow I want you to get us the good wine.
We used to have 1 bottle of vodka. My mother hid it. So I told my mother I was crying. I said, give it to them tomorrow. Tell them that you have it and give it to them. She says, no, I'll give it to somebody, to a Polish woman. She went to a Polish woman. She gave her the bottle of vodka. The German came, and there was a gate in our place where we lived. He was on the outside gate, and my mother came over from the inside gate. He said to her, so where is the wine? She says, I don't have. Wouldn't I give you? Would I? And he always said, I'll shoot you and your children. So my mother said, would I want you to shoot my children and me for a bottle of wine? If I had it, I would give it to you. I don't have it. And my mother was moving closer to the German to talk to him. And he said, go away, go away. Don't stay so close to me, you're a Jew. We lived in a small house, and it was like a beautiful garden there. So he came again to this garden, the same German, and he saw a chicken that my mother put on a string, a chicken. So he said, how could you have a heart to put the chicken on a string when he wanted to kill her children? And the chicken is on a string. So she took off the string and the chicken ran away. We didn't have the chicken anymore.
The Germans made a law that all the Jews must wear a yellow star because they wanted to humiliate the Jewish population. And one day I was walking with my mother, and a little boy, Polish boy, was yelling to the passing German, Jude, Jude, Jew, Jew. And the German came over to my mother and said, wo ist dein Schandefleck? It means, where is your mark of shame? And she was wearing a shawl because it was school.
And she opened up the shawl and she said, "Here on my dress." He said, "No, you don't wear it hidden. You have to put it on the shawl so everybody can see." When they told us to wear the yellow star, my father couldn't take it, the humiliation, so he didn't go outside. He didn't go out, he stayed in the house for a long time. And he was so afraid that we had the toilet was outside and we had a lock on it. So he used to send me to open it up, see if they don't see any Germans, then come and take him out of there. Usually on Saturdays, the Germans made the younger children, like up till 12, to go and clean the poop from the horses in the street. It was a small town and was used a lot of horses and buggies. And I was among them. I was cleaning, and then a Polish girl that I used to go to school with, she passed by and she says, "Soon they'll make soap out of you," because they heard a rumor that from the fat of the people, when they kill them, they make soap. When the Germans came to town, they were stealing from the Jewish houses whatever they want. So my father decided that he's going to hide the valuable things in the chairs. We had 5 chairs. He put the chair upside down, and in the empty spaces, he filled up with all different things that we can trade with the Polish people, and then nailed it down with wood. In the chairs was fabric to make a coat or a dress. It was soap. Soap was a very good thing to have, because if you gave a piece of soap, they gave you a lot for this, because you couldn't get it then. One day, a Jewish person, a friend, came over to us and said, "Germans are going from house to house because they know now that the Jews are hiding their valuable things in the chairs." So hearing this, I took all the chairs that we had 5 chairs, and I had to hide them. So I took 1 chair, went to the barn, put it away, was okay. Then I took another one, all right. But the 3rd one, when I started to run to hide it in a barn, the Germans passed by and they saw me and they said, "Halt!" Oh my God, I almost died. And I was what? I was 13 years old. They said, "Halt!" And I stopped with the chair in my hand. And they came over to me, "Where do you live?" I saw them, "Here." They came into our house, opened up, and they said to me, "I wouldn't shoot you, I'll hang you." And I was crying. I knew he wouldn't hang me then, but I was crying that they caught me, and I was crying that I'm losing what's inside, because we can use it to have food on the table. And again, I would not shoot you, I'll hang you. And I was crying and crying, and my mother was standing and my sister, and they took one, took out everything, and they took another one, and they also took, we had silver, like spoons, silver spoons and forks, and this was in a little sack, my mother kept it because she didn't use it then, and they said, "This they taking too." So okay, they put everything on the side what they wanted to take. My mother was very daring. The garbage pail was near it, and she took the whole thing and threw it in this garbage pail, the silver. And they took tablecloth. What else did they take? I don't remember already, but they took a lot of things they took away from us. And we were thanking God that he doesn't do anything to me or to any of us. And before they left, my mother, knowing that she took the silver away, she said to them, "You sure you didn't forget anything? Make sure that you didn't forget anything," again and again. And they didn't answer, they didn't say anything. And this how later on, and we didn't know that she took back the silver, but later on, and we yelled, why did you do it? Especially me, I was so scared. I said, let them take what they want.
A few days later, the Germans came again to our house, and they found money that was hidden on top of the drapes. This money was not really our money. This was the money from the Judenrat, because the Germans used to tell them what they need, and they bought it for them. But because they found the money, they told my mother that my father has to come to the gendarmerie, the German headquarters. They want to talk to him.
You know, if you would tell my father, he would give anything he has not to go there.
My mother was scared for him, because usually if you go there, you come out beaten up.
My mother said she wants to go with him. They said no, just him. As I told you before, my father spoke perfect German. So my father came there to the gendarmerie, and they started to ask him, how come you hid these things over there? He said, I'll tell you the truth. It was a war, and everybody was stealing from everybody. And I knew that if I put it there, they wouldn't steal it. So my father said to them, the money, what they found the money, I have small children, and this money is for you to buy boots or other things to do. So I didn't want my children to take it. And then when they stopped, my mother told me later, when he had to get out of there, he didn't turn his back on them. He walked with the front, you know, like backing out. And he came home, he was half dead, you know, from fear. But they didn't touch him. Never did it happen that somebody came to them and they didn't beat him up. He spoke nice German, and they understood. The things he explained to them was reasonable, you know. I don't know, he was smart, my father, how he said it. And they let him go. He came home, and we were rejoicing. We thought, that's it, he's finished.
But we didn't know at the time that this was just the beginning. Soon it would get much worse.